Mr. President, there are two genders, male and female. Gender is determined by one's biological sex. One cannot simply choose their gender, swap and change. Basic science tells us this. Not only is the difference between male and female clear and obvious, Mr. President, on a gross macroscopic level, but our sex, and thus our gender, can be exposed and determined by the DNA in every cell in our body. Mr. President, the sex of a baby, and thus the gender, is determined at fertilisation. The event is then recorded in every cell in our bodies as it is reviewed through cellular division. This basic biological truth has become a statement one must be too afraid to make. This is ridiculous. I understand the burden of my position, and I will fulfil in this chamber my obligation to what I believe is the silent majority who expect more from their politicians than to bow to the pressure of the left. It seems, Mr. President, we live in a society where small children can better explain what makes a man and a woman than world leaders and eminent figures. Our own Federal Department of Health struggled defining a woman, taking 4 months to respond when questioned in the Senate. Earlier this month, the New Zealand Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, refused to define a woman, stating, "People define themselves," and that the question had come out of left field, and, well, he didn't have a pre-formulated answer on it. Our children know who is male and who is female, Mr. President. That isn't until they are brainwashed by the woke societal values impressed on them, such as the gender unicorn or genderbread man embedded into the Year 7 state curriculum. It is vital, Mr. President, that the Parliament retain gendered pronouns he and she. Removing essential identifiers is the beginning of the slippery slope in what has quite frankly become a sex confusion pandemic amongst our young people. Now, Mr. President, I don't accept bullying of any kind, but shouldn't this generosity be extended to those who understand there are two genders, male and female, and who want to protect their children? I have spoken to distressed parents of sex-confused children. They adore their children. They love their children unconditionally. But they speak in detail of bullying and harassment in the workplace and school environment for their attempts to do everything right and protective. Adopting the minority ideology and enforcing it on the majority is not right. The 2021 census allowed for the first time to use a third option in the gender category. 0.17% of the Australian population ticked that box. You make exceptions to the rule, not rules for the exception. Mr. President, school principals are too afraid to speak out for fear of persecution and job loss. Instead of protecting society, representing and advocating for our community, politicians are often making the matters worse. We've seen bipartisan support for removal of he and she, and our own parliamentary committee that consisted of Liberal and Labor members decided the term opposite sex may be discriminatory. The Parliament is wasting its time on a small percentage of people that want to dictate how we live. It was reported recently that the Legislative Council adopted genderless standing orders in 1999, and at the same time the House of Assembly attempted this almost 10 years prior, but it can be said that motivations were different then. They were more concerned about gender equality. How can we have equality between the genders if they aren't even recognised or understood? I know the woke brigade think feelings trump fact in lawmaking, but laws based on feelings are fluid and subject to change, which is an unsound basis on which to make laws. It's damaging to society and in particular our children. Parliament must retain fundamental, essential terminology and set an example and uphold truth in this place. Teachers must have the right and confidence to refer to their students as boys and girls. Mr. President, in 2013, discrimination based on biological sex was replaced with discrimination based on self-identified gender in the Commonwealth Sex Discrimination Act 1984. This development was a mistake because the hard-won rights of women are being lost and children are being indoctrinated with the belief that they can choose to be male or female. Tonje Javon, a filmmaker in Norway, now faces up to 3 years in prison for saying that transgender men cannot be lesbian. This is a dangerous precedent to set as punishment for stating the absolute fact. In America, the governor of Florida is before the United States District Court because he supports sex being defined according to biology, on the basis the physical characteristics of men and women are enduring, stable and objective, I agree. I stand alone in this chamber today, but I know others here feel the same. Mr. President, I will in the near future be calling this motion to a vote to clarify where we all stand, what we believe in, and for public accountability. I commend this motion to the House.